Welcome, dear students. The focus of the current session is tracing diachronic changes in English with examples. I hope and expect by the end of this session, through some examples, you would have a clear understanding of what is the nature of diachronic changes and how they can be traced. Well, my dear students, diachronic changes can be of different types. They can be studied at different levels, for example, at the phonological level or semantic or syntactic levels. Here I would start with the examples of syntactic changes from the diachronic lens. A syntactic change generally unfolds much more slowly. What I mean by that is, if you look at the history of, for example, the English language, and if you try to trace how, over a period of time, through the centuries, syntactic changes have taken place, changes in the syntax, in the grammatical structure of a sentence have taken place, you would notice that the process is very slow. Generally, syntactic changes in all languages are slower than other types of changes. An example of syntactic change in English can be seen in the development from the verb second, that is V2 word order, used before the 15th century, to the modern word order that we use today. If you look at Old and Middle English, it had V2 word order. Notice, for example, here on the screen, if you notice on the screen, you would see the use of, the word now, which is written like this. No, by the way, in the first position, and the verb look, that is look in the modern times, in the second position. Please read the line that is taken from Old English. Now look average man toward himself. Actually, it is, now look every man towards himself. Right now, I'm not focusing on the pronunciation. I'm also not focusing on the spellings. I'm just focusing on the syntactic structure, the arrangement of words, what comes before what and what comes after what. If you look at the sequence is now look every man to himself. We do not use this structure in modern English. Look at the comparison with modern English. Modern English structure is like this. Now it's for every man to look to himself. So, this change that has come in the structure, in the syntax of English language, it has taken centuries to happen. And this is, by the way, one of the examples of how diachronic studies can trace back in the history, how it was in the past at a certain time point, but how it has evolved through the times to the current times. Well, my dear students, drift is another term. It is used in linguistics to describe a slow and imperceptual change in a given direction. One of the best known instances of this is the gradual development from syntactic to analytical language in the history of English language. Well, I think this is a good time to explain the terms synthetic versus analytical languages. All the languages are either synthetic or analytical. What is a synthetic language? A synthetic language is a language that shows grammatical relationships through inflections. By changing inflections, it shows, grammatical relationships. Whereas an analytical language, it represents the grammatical relationships through word order. English was once a synthetic language. Today it is not. Today it has become analytical language. Let me give you an example to give you a clarity. For example, Urdu is still a synthetic language. In Urdu, for example, we say, ladki ki kitab. Or we say, aslam ki ladki. Aslam ki beti. In all these examples, the use of ki, or aslam ka beta, the use of ka. This ki and ka are used, to show gender, to show the grammatical relationships of one item, aslam, with the other item, beta, or one item aslam and the other item, beti, by choosing ka or ki, etc. In English, it doesn't happen so. In English, it is Aslam's son, Aslam's daughter. So, it would be the structure of the sentence, the word order, not, the inflection, the use of anything with, Aslam or with daughter or son that would tell us about the gender. I hope you are clear about that. Another example that I would give is of masculine, feminine, and neuter, genders. In Old English, gender was applicable to words as well as their case. To understand this concept, it is important to know that when English uses gender, they are not implying that everything is either a girl or a boy or is neutral. But they simply refer to the class of synthetic languages. Well, my dear students, English actually no longer uses grammatical genders. It actually only refers to the biological gender, as I have given you the examples by comparing it with Urdu. You can further think about examples from Urdu and English language to have a clarity on the concept. And this is one of the areas that can be a focus of diachronic study, where a diachronic linguist can look at it, how it has happened through the times in English language, or how, in comparison and contrast, with other languages, historically, the change has taken place. The process of analogy. This is another thing that I'd like to talk about with reference to diachronic change. The standardizing of both S and ED endings is a great example of analogy. The process of analogy occurs when a particular ending or rule becomes so popular that it becomes a normal choice. And all new words will follow the same process when conjugated. So, by adding S or ES, a plural is made. Initially, there were plurals that would be made in other ways as well, for example, by adding EN, by adding other forms as well. But with the passage of time, this particular use of S or ES became so popular that later on, through the times, we can study historically, most of the plurals would be made by using them. So, for example, if you post a tweet on Twitter, you have tweeted something. This is the example of the use of ED, for changing a noun into a verb that happens, as a process of analogy. Through the times, this is the change that comes, and we can study it diachronically.